What if the energy you've been seeking to heal, to transform, to rise above the noise of this world has never been lost, but simply sleeping, coiled like a serpent at the base of your being, not waiting for knowledge, not waiting for belief, waiting for readiness? And what if that energy wasn't forgotten by accident? That which is below corresponds to that which is above. These are not just words, they are keys, codes, mirrors. In ancient glyphs and stone temples, long swallowed by sand, the image returns. A serpent, not evil, not wild, but sacred, wrapped gently around a tree or a staff or a ladder made of light. In the scrolls of Thoth, it is written, the body is the tomb of the soul, and yet also its vehicle. The serpent is what moves it. Not every culture called it Kundalini, but all who looked inward saw it. They drew it. They built temples to it. They feared it or revered it. This is not just a concept. It is a map, a technology older than time. And someone, somewhere, decided you shouldn't know it. This is the story of Kundalini, the hidden power humanity forgot, or was forced to forget. They say history is written by the victors. But there is a deeper history written in symbols, in silence, in the bones of temples that were never meant to fall. And in that hidden history, the serpent appears again. Egypt, India, Sumer, Tibet, even the ancient Hebrew mystics. Each spoke a different language, yet each drew the same curve of energy, the same spiral rising through the spine. In Egypt, it was the uraeus rising from the brow of the pharaoh, not decoration, but declaration. This one has awakened. In India, the coiled Shakti at the base of the spine, sleeping in the Muladhara, awaiting her union with Shiva at the crown. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, the central pillar, the path of return channels that same current from earth to ether. Different names, same blueprint. What was this blueprint for? Not religion, not dogma, but evolution. Not physical, though it moves through the body. Not emotional, though it will burn through your traumas. But spiritual, the unfolding of a higher intelligence, coded within you, designed to awaken, when the inner and outer cosmos align. Kundalini is not just energy. It is the mechanism by which the soul remembers itself. The ladder of Jacob, the staff of Moses, the spine of Osiris. Each image, a whisper of the same truth. But if it's so essential, so universal, why was it hidden? Because those who knew also knew the danger. He who knows how to use fire builds civilizations. He who misuses it burns them to the ground. Kundalini is fire. Not metaphorical fire, but real, raw, unfiltered life force. And like any force of nature, it does not ask permission. It purifies, it consumes, it creates anew. In the golden ages of forgotten empires, the serpent was revered, taught carefully, transmitted through initiations, temples, lineages of wisdom keepers. But as time turned and power consolidated, something changed. Kings became fearful of sages. Churches feared the silence between thoughts. And the systems that rose to rule to control needed subjects who obeyed, not sovereigns, who glowed from within. So the teachings were veiled, the symbols encrypted. Kundalini was recast not as awakening, but as madness, as heresy, as a threat to the order of things. What greater threat to a false kingdom than a soul that doesn't need a crown? When you awaken Kundalini, you no longer need to believe. You know. And that kind of knowing can't be bought, or sold, or governed. That is why it was hidden. Yet, truth cannot be buried forever. Even in darkness, symbols leak through the cracks. You've seen them, even if you didn't realize what you were seeing. A serpent winding around a staff, the caduceus, the emblem of medicine, of healing, of balance. But it is not just about health. It is about the two currents, Ida and Pingala, weaving like twin serpents up the spine, meeting at the ajna, the third eye. The tree of life in the Kabbalah, its branches reaching heaven, its roots reaching earth. 10 Sephirot, count them again and find the chakras. 7 steps of the Egyptian ladder, 7 tones of creation, 7 seals, 7 heavens, all describing the same sacred ascent. Coincidence? No. These are echoes. Because the soul remembers what the mind forgets. And even if words are lost, the pattern remains encoded in myth, in art, in architecture, in our very anatomy. The serpent still sleeps at the base of the tree, but the tree lives inside you. This isn't just spiritual poetry, it's biology, it's physics, it's sacred geometry. Kundalini is the thread that ties it all together. And it still whispers, in dreams, in breath, in moments of stillness when the world grows quiet. So what exactly is this serpent? Not a creature, but a current. Not symbolic, but real, subtle, intelligent. In yogic science, Kundalini is described as Shakti, the divine feminine force, coiled 3.5 times at the base of the spine. But don't let the metaphor soften its magnitude. When awakened, this energy rises spiraling upward through the 7 chakras, dissolving illusion, releasing trauma, and activating higher states of perception. Each chakra is not a wheel, but a gate. Each gate opens only when the lower self is ready to dissolve into something greater. The principle of vibration, as taught in Hermetic philosophy, says nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Kundalini is the finest vibration. It is not pushed, it is pulled, drawn upward by longing, discipline, surrender. Like sap rising through the tree in spring. This energy isn't foreign. It is you in your rawest, most alive state. And in that state, the body becomes more than flesh. It becomes a temple, a circuit, a channel for something far older than thought, yet more intimate than breath. As the Hermeticists say, the all is mind. But Kundalini Kundalini is how the mind moves through the body. It is the divine descending into matter, and the human rising back to the divine. But what happens when this current is forgotten? What happens to a species that no longer remembers how to light its own fire? Civilizations fall not from war, but from disconnection. Once, knowledge of Kundalini, of inner alchemy, was embedded in every aspect of culture, from how we breathed to how we moved, to how we sang and gathered and built. But over centuries, this inner science was fractured. Priesthoods guarded the symbols, but hid the keys. Empires feared the free thinker, the inner traveler, and labeled mystics as madmen, witches, heretics. Why? Because Kundalini teaches self-sovereignty. Because once you feel the serpent stir, you realize you don't need permission to awaken. You don't need a temple to remember the divine. You don't even need belief, only readiness. And that readiness is dangerous to those who benefit from you staying asleep. The rise of the serpent within dissolves hierarchy. It breaks dependency on outer authority. It reveals that God is not out there, but rising through you now, always. That's why they called it madness. That's why they buried it. Because once the energy rises, you don't go back. You shed skins. You burn lies. You become uncontrollable. Not chaotic, but true. And yet, the signs were never fully erased. They linger in plain sight like dreams you half remember. Look closer at the staff of Hermes' two serpents intertwining, rising up a central rod crowned by wings. This is not mythology. It is a diagram. The spinal column, the dual currents, the rise toward illumination. In the tree of life, we see the same structure left, pillar right pillar, and the middle path. The road the serpent takes when awakened, balanced and conscious. Even in Christianity, the serpent appears in Eden. Misunderstood, cast as the deceiver. But what did it really offer? Eat of this, and your eyes shall be opened. Was this evil, or was it initiation? The ancients did not hate the serpent. They wore it on crowns, carved it into stone, called upon it in their rites. The Mayans, the Hopi, the Chinese. Each culture saw in the serpent something sacred. Movement, transformation, rebirth. Because deep down the soul knows. The symbol returns not by accident, but by design. The soul is not linear. It moves in spirals. Just like the serpent. Even buried, even feared, even suppressed, Kundalini does not die. It waits. And those who hear the whisper, those who feel the stirring, are called to remember. Not just the energy, but the path. That path, though ancient, is not lost. It has always been marked quietly by the Hermetic teachings. As above, so below. As within, so without. Kundalini is the bridge between these reflections. It embodies the principle of polarity, the interplay of opposites. Feminine and masculine, lunar and solar, stillness and motion. When this duality is harmonized within you, the serpent begins to rise. It also reflects the principle of rhythm, for Kundalini does not shoot upward in chaos, but flows like a tide. Upward, downward, inward, outward, in waves of initiation. And deeper still, the principle of gender. Not male and female as forms, but as archetypal forces. The left side of your body carries the receptive lunar energy. The right, the expressive solar force. Kundalini is their sacred marriage. In union, something new is born, not a thing, but a state of being. One where you no longer seek God in the sky, but feel it pulse in your spine. Where you no longer ask for light, but realize you are its vessel. This is not mystical poetry. This is energetic reality. And as you walk the hermetic path consciously, gently, Kundalini ceases to be a myth. It becomes your mirror, your mentor, your memory of the truth you always carried. To awaken Kundalini is not to gain power, but to remember that you were never powerless. So now the question becomes, what happens when the serpent wakes? Not in myth, not in books, but in you. There are those who have felt it, a heat rising through the spine, a pressure in the skull dreams that shimmer too brightly to be imagined. Some feel bliss, others terror. Because Kundalini is not a gentle guest, it is an invitation to transformation. If the vessel is not prepared, the fire purifies too fast. If the ego resists, it breaks sometimes painfully. This is why the path was once protected not out of secrecy, but reverence. Like lightning, Kundalini does not judge. It simply follows the path of least resistance. If that path is clear, it heals. If it's blocked, it may burn first, not to punish, but to reveal. That's why awakening must be grounded through breath, presence, integrity. Because this is not about escaping the body. It's about inhabiting it fully as a temple for consciousness. And perhaps that is what was most dangerous to the old world. Not the serpent itself, but a human who walks with it. Awake, rooted, sovereign, and free. So, where do you begin? Not in books, though they may guide. Not in gurus, though they may point. The path begins in stillness, in listening to the subtle rhythm of your own being. Close your eyes. Feel your breath as it moves like a tide. Notice the base of your spine, the place where stillness thickens into heat. That is not imagination. That is the threshold. Kundalini does not awaken through force. It awakens through readiness, when your inner world becomes aligned, when your life becomes a sacred vessel. Discipline sharpens the vessel. Devotion fills it. And eventually, the current stirs. The serpent begins to move. Not upward just yet, but inward. Coiling through memory, loosening old fears, breaking open the cages of belief. And slowly, with breath, with prayer, with surrender, it begins to climb. This is not a race. This is alchemy. The fusion of shadow and light. The reintegration of what you were told to deny. until the crown opens and the serpent, having completed its ascent, becomes the wings. And you realize you were never just a body, never just a mind. You are the bridge between earth and sky, the tree, the flame, the path. And the serpent was never separate from you. It was you all along. And now you stand at the edge, not of knowledge, but of remembrance. This is not the end of the story. It is the place where stories dissolve and experience begins. Because once the serpent rises, there is no going back to forgetting. No returning to the illusion that power lies outside you. You may still walk among the world, but you will walk differently. Not with superiority, but with stillness. Not to convince, but to become. Others will sense it not in your words, but in your presence. For the awakened carry a certain silence within them, a glow that cannot be faked. And the world needs them now more than ever. Because the temples have crumbled, the texts are scattered. But the blueprint was always in the body. And if you've listened this far, if something inside you stirs, then maybe, just maybe, the serpent has already begun to move. And so we ask, has the serpent stirred within you before? If so, leave your story below. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if you feel the call to go deeper, download the free Hermetic Field Guide and begin to walk the path within. But be warned, in the stillness, the serpent does not sleep forever. It only waits for you to remember. What if the sacred fire inside you is not a light to be switched on, but a storm to be prepared for? What if your awakening was never meant to be fast, but deep? The ancient masters didn't speak often of Kundalini, and when they did, it was always in metaphors. They whispered of a serpent coiled at the base of the spine, dormant, silent, waiting. Not because it was weak, but because it was powerful, sacred. They called it the fire beneath the earth, the sun within the soul. A force that once awakened could transfigure consciousness or destroy it. Kundalini is not just energy. It is the blueprint of evolution embedded in your subtle body. In yogic texts, it is Shakti, the divine feminine, the force of creation. But in Hermetic terms, it mirrors the alchemical fire. Not simply heat, but transformation. Not a spark to ignite instantly, but a slow burn, melting away illusion, ego, ignorance. As above, so below, says the Kybalion. The fire of the sun transforms the outer world. It grows, crops, fuels, winds, stirs oceans. Kundalini is the inner sun. Its heat refines the soul, burns the impurities of the lower self, and reveals the gold of spirit. But the fire is neutral. What it touches, it transforms for better or worse. And that is why the serpent sleeps. But not everyone waits. In today's spiritual marketplace, there's a growing obsession with quick enlightenment. Videos promise instant activation. Retreats offer weekend awakenings. Books speak of power, raw, untamed, seductive. But few speak of the preparation. Fewer still mention the consequences. The ancient texts never described Kundalini as a casual practice. In fact, they warned explicitly against premature awakening. And these warnings weren't metaphors. They were born from real experiences, real danger. There's the case of a man in northern India who practiced intense abdominal breathing, 𝓂𝓏𝓭𝓪𝓭𝓏𝓿, without proper grounding. After 2 weeks of deep focus, something ignited within him. He felt euphoric at first light, even invincible. But days later, he couldn't sleep. Then came the racing heartbeats, the hallucinations, the profound disorientation. He thought he was ascending. But in truth, he was falling into chaos, not clarity. Gopi Krishna, one of the few who chronicled his own spontaneous awakening, wrote in his journal, "My brain seemed to be expanding. I could neither sleep, nor think, nor function." He wasn't exaggerating. His life was nearly consumed by the force he thought he could harness. This is not to scare. It is to respect. For when the sacred fire is misused, it is not Kundalini that punishes. It is simply the law of nature responding to imbalance. The same way a river out of its banks becomes a flood. Kundalini, if stirred without structure, can drown the very soul it was meant to elevate. Today's world praises acceleration. Hack your mind. Unlock your power now. Awaken in 7 steps. But the sacred path is not a race. It is a rhythm. The Kybalion teaches us rhythm compensates. Every high swing is met with a counterbalancing low. The pendulum, once pushed too far, will swing back with equal force. This is the danger of forced awakening. You climb too quickly and fall just as fast. You tap into realms of consciousness without anchoring the body, without purifying the heart, without steadying the mind. The result: a thunderbolt trapped in glass. In alchemical language, this is known as the false fire. The illusion of progress without the foundation of truth. It flickers, it dazzles, it seduces. But it does not last. Because the vessel, the self, is unprepared to contain the flame. What you think is awakening might just be stimulation. What feels like enlightenment may in fact be spiritual bypassing, wearing robes of light. True transformation is never frantic. It is patient. It is exacting. And above all, it is earned. So then, what does right awakening look like? The ancient paths were never about shortcuts. They were about refinement of mind, body, and spirit over years, sometimes lifetimes. And at the center of every genuine path lay 3 essential pillars. Stillness of mind. Not silence by suppression, but silence by understanding. A mind that no longer chases every thought, that does not flinch with every feeling, but rests in awareness like a clear lake undisturbed by wind. Moral purification. Not rigid morality, but alignment. Acting in harmony with truth. Free from self-deception, desire for control, or spiritual pride. Because Kundalini, like lightning, seeks the path of least resistance. And if the body harbors shadow, the energy will follow it. Discernment. Knowing not just what is happening, but why it's happening. The ability to distinguish insight from imagination. True awakening from emotional turbulence. As the Upanishads say, when the breath is still, the mind is still, and when the mind is still, the door opens. You don't force this door open. You become the kind of presence the door naturally opens to. Think of a seed. If you dig it up too soon, you kill it. But if you water it, shelter it, let the soil work its quiet magic. One day, without warning, it breaks the surface. Not in struggle, but in grace. And that is perhaps the greatest misunderstanding in modern spirituality. Kundalini is not a goal. It is not the destination of your path. It is the byproduct, the natural consequence of living in deep alignment. You don't chase the sacred fire. You become the temple where fire descends. This is echoed across wisdom traditions. In Hermeticism, fire symbolizes purification, transmutation, and divine will. It is never to be commanded, it arrives when the vessel is ready. In Taoism, they speak of Wu Wei non-forcing the art of aligned action. And in the yogic sciences, true awakening is called sahaja, spontaneous, effortless, beyond will. So many seek to control Kundalini, to harness it, to make it serve them. But this energy does not respond to ego. It responds to emptiness, to surrender, to the dissolving of the false self layer by layer, until only truth remains. You do not ignite Kundalini. You clear the way. And when the inner path is open, when the channels are pure, the breath steady, the mind still, she rises, not like a firecracker, but like dawn. And when she rises, everything changes. Not just your thoughts, not just your sensations, but your very perception of reality. How you see, how you feel, how you relate to the world. Because Kundalini is not merely a force of energy. She is a mirror. And what she reflects is you. If your mind is agitated, you'll feel chaos. If your emotions are unresolved, you'll face them amplified. If your ego still clings to power, identity, or superiority, this energy will burn right through the illusions you've built. This is why the ancients feared a premature awakening, because it doesn't just awaken your light. It awakens your shadows too. That's the sacred paradox. The fire that brings illumination is the same fire that scorches. And yet, it is not cruel. It is honest. It shows you everything, whether or not you are ready. This is why some mystics weep during awakening. Why others retreat in silence for years. Why some feel lost while others feel found. The experience is not uniform, but the law is universal. The energy reveals the truth. And your preparation determines whether that truth heals you or overwhelms you. So, before you seek to awaken the serpent, Ask not how fast you can do it. Ask, who is it that seeks? What part of you is calling for this fire? Is it the soul longing to dissolve into unity? Or is it the ego, dressed in spiritual robes, seeking power status escape? Because if it is the latter, Kundalini will not give you what you want. She will give you what you need. Even if it's collapse. Even if it's darkness. Even if it's silence. The sacred fire does not answer to desire. It answers to readiness. So start not by chasing the fire, but by cultivating the ground. Build the temple stone by stone. With your breath, your choices, your silence, your sincerity. Let your mind grow still. Let your heart soften. Let your body become a vessel, strong, open, clear. And when the time is right, not because you demanded it, not because you timed it, but because it was written, she will rise, not in chaos, but in clarity, not to destroy you, but to return you to what you've always been beneath the noise, a current of consciousness, a flame of the One, a silent temple in which the divine awakens itself. So now, take a breath, a slow, deep breath, and ask yourself, not from the mind, but from the quiet space behind it, am I seeking power, or am I becoming silence? Because Kundalini is not a weapon. It is not an achievement. It is the sacred unfolding of your inner cosmos, a dance between stillness and fire, between knowing and unknowing, between who you were and who you're called to become. The serpent at the base of your spine is not asleep because it is lazy. It is asleep because it is wise. It waits until the soil is fertile, the vessel is clean, and the soul is humble. Only then will the fire rise not to light your ego, but to burn it clean. So do not rush. Do not force. Do not chase the storm. Instead, become the silence that invites it. And in that silence, in that deep surrender, the sacred fire will know it's time. What if each chakra is not merely an energy center, but a sealed gate, each guarded by a trial no one can bypass, only endure? This is not just about awakening, but ascending. Or as the ancient emerald tablet whispered, man is a star bound to the body until he awakens the light within. But that light does not erupt like a flame. It reveals itself through 7 veils, 7 thresholds of self. And each veil asks a question your soul cannot escape. Do you know which veil you're stuck behind? Most teachings speak of Kundalini as a force that rises serpentine electric divine. But in the older schools, the hidden schools, it was never just a force. It was a map, a riddle, a sacred ordeal. The spine is the axis mundi. The 7 chakras are not steps up a ladder. They are initiations. 7 inner heavens, 7 inner hells. And as the Hermetic law tells us, as above, so below. The 7 heavens of ancient Babylon mirrored the 7 seals of the soul. The soul's ascent was not a race upward, but a process of unlocking, uncoiling, unmasking. Kundalini does not rise because you wish it to. It rises when you are hollow enough to hold it. Each chakra, then, is a gate, and each gate has its trial. The first gate is Muladhara, the root, the trial of fear. It governs survival grounding, the primal need to feel safe in this body, in this world. But the gatekeeper here is not external. It is the silent voice in the dark whispering, "Do I have enough to survive? Am I secure? Am I worthy of being here?" This fear is ancient. Not the fear of monsters or shadows, but the trembling of being cut off from the source. It lives in the body, in the clenched jaw, the tight fists, the restless sleep. If you cannot pass this gate, Kundalini may stir, but it will have nowhere to go. You may feel bursts of energy, anxiety, even awakening, but they will be laced with panic, with the need to protect and retreat. A being stuck at the root becomes obsessed with control, hoarding, defensiveness, chronic tension. Life becomes a battlefield. Every opportunity is seen through the lens of survival. Safety is mistaken for growth. To move through this gate is not to kill fear, it is to witness it, to hold it in stillness, to say, "I see you, and I choose to stay open anyway." Only then does the gate of desire appear. Svadhisthana, the 2nd chakra, the trial of desire. This is the realm of water, of longing, of creation. Here we encounter our emotions, our sensuality, our hunger for beauty, intimacy, movement. But the trial is subtle. It asks, do you possess your desire, or does it possess you? If you repress it, you become hollow. If you chase it, you become lost. The ancient ones did not reject pleasure, but they warned pleasure must flow, not bind. Those who stumble here drown in addiction to sex, to drama, to dopamine, to love that consumes instead of liberates. The soul begins to orbit its cravings like a moth to flame. Yet, when this trial is past, desire is no longer a chain. It becomes a current, a sacred impulse that fuels creation without distortion. From here, the fire rises. Manipura, the solar plexus, the trial of power. Now we enter the domain of will, of identity, of fire. Here lies the great paradox to become powerful without becoming corrupted. Can you stand in your sovereignty without needing to dominate? This is where many awaken and fall. Because power feels good and it seduces. The spiritual ego forms here, I am awakened, therefore I am above. But the Hermeticists warned, the possession of power unbalanced by wisdom is the path to ruin. Manipura is the forge. Here the ego is either hardened into arrogance or tempered into service. Those who cannot pass this gate seek control over others, validation, applause. But those who do pass become warriors of the inner sun. They do not command light, they radiate it. And yet, light is not always enough. For now comes the heart. Anahata, the trial of grief. This gate is not guarded by pain, it is made of it. Here lives the broken-heartedness of lifetimes, the betrayals, the abandonments, the words never spoken, the wounds never closed. To open anahata is to bleed willingly. To forgive those who never apologized. To let go of the walls that once saved you. To love without needing to be loved back. This is not romance. This is resurrection. Anahata is the axis, the center of the seven. If this gate remains closed, the energy cannot rise further. You may speak truth, seek wisdom, even surrender, but the current will not flow. Because it is the heart that purifies all the rest. Vishuddha, the trial of truth. Beyond the heart lies the throat, but its gate is not sound, it is silence. This is where expression meets alignment, where thought, word, and deed must unify. No more masks, no more performances. The question at this gate is piercing. Can you speak truth even if it costs you everything? This is not merely about honesty with others. It is about honesty with yourself. Can you admit what you truly want, what you fear, who you have become? Many seekers lose their voice here. They whisper truths when they should roar them, or they shout illusions, mistaking noise for knowing. Energetically, this trial often feels like constriction, a lump in the throat, a choking back of expression. It is no accident. The soul is trying to speak, but the mind is still afraid. To pass Vishuddha is not to be loud, it is to be clear. It is to become a vessel for truth that does not waver, even if it isolates you. For once truth is spoken, illusions begin to fall apart. And so we enter the domain of vision. Ajna, the trial of illusion. Often called the third eye, this chakra does not give you sight. It challenges you to see without your eyes. Here, intuition sharpens. Patterns emerge, but so too does delusion. The greatest illusion is to believe you've awakened when you've only begun to dream. The Hermetic wisdom warns. There are none so blind as those who claim to see without knowing. Ajna is the trickster gate. It offers insights, dreams, signs. But it also tempts the ego to feel special, chosen, superior. Many fall into this trap: spiritual fantasies, psychic noise, cosmic narratives that keep the mind spinning while the heart remains untouched. The trial here is discernment. To know the difference between a vision and a projection, between guidance and escapism. Ajna, when purified, becomes like a clear mirror. It reflects truth without distortion. But if fogged by ego or fear, it becomes a hall of mirrors. And if you pass this final illusion, there is only one gate left. Sahasrara, the trial of surrender. The 1,000-petaled crown. the silent temple above the mind. But this is not an ascent into light. It is a descent into nothingness. This gate holds no question, only a demand: die before you die. It is the dissolution of the self that sought to awaken, the collapse of all seeking, the surrender of even the need to know. Here, control vanishes, time dissolves. You are no longer the one climbing, you are the space the ladder appeared in. Most resist this gate even after lifetimes of work. They hover in half-awakened states, wise in language, rich in insights, but still subtly clinging to identity. To truly enter Sahasrara is to vanish as a separate self, to merge with the all, to no longer have a path, because you are the path. And yet, this is not the end, only the silence before a new breath. The trials are not trophies. This is where many misunderstand the map. They imagine that reaching a higher chakra means leveling up, gaining powers, becoming more spiritual, ascending in some cosmic hierarchy. But the ancient initiates knew each chakra is not a reward. It is a refinement, a crucible. To pass through these gates is not to become more, but less. Less attached, less reactive, less identified with the illusion of me. You are not adding light, you are removing veils. Kundalini does not rise because you demand it. It rises because you become still enough to be transformed by it. Each gate challenges a core human instinct: fear, desire, control, attachment, deception, delusion, separation. You don't defeat these instincts, you illuminate them. You walk with them. You bow to the teaching they bring. And the deeper truth is, you don't climb Kundalini. Kundalini climbs you. Like a sculptor chiseling away what is false, until only what is essential remains. As you ascend, the trials grow quieter, not because they disappear, but because your resistance dissolves. At the root, the ego screams. At the crown, the ego is gone. But here's a question no one asks. Can you bring your ego to the mountaintop and still leave it behind? Because at the summit there's no one left to meet, only yourself stripped of all names. So the journey is not toward something, it is toward no thing. And in that no thing, you discover the true meaning of awakening. Not to be filled with light, but to become so empty that light moves through you. Now close your eyes. Feel into the chakra that's been calling your attention. Not the one you want to work on, the one you've been avoiding. That is the gate you are facing. And that is the trial waiting for you. You may ask, where do I begin? Begin exactly where you are. Which gate are you standing at? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're ready to deepen this journey, watch Part 2, The Ancient Keys to Unlock Each Chakra Trial. Or download the free guide Hermetic Chakra Integration Workbook. Because this is not the end. This is your first real beginning. You have reached the silence after the last veil. And yet, the path echoes onward. Because now that the map is revealed, the real question is not where the gates are, but how you move through them. Symbols without embodiment are just ink in the wind. Insight without integration becomes illusion in disguise. So Part 2 will not just describe the gates, it will offer you the keys. Ancient methods, inner alchemy. Daily practices drawn from Hermetic yogic and mystery school traditions, not to bypass the trials, but to walk through them with awareness. For example, at the root, grounding is not just earthing or safety. It's a deep nervous system rewiring to teach your body you are no longer at war. At the sacral, it's not suppressing desire but transmuting it, turning lust into life force, turning chaos into creativity. At the solar plexus, it's not shrinking to be humble, but learning how sacred rage becomes noble will, how to channel fire without burning bridges. At the heart, we explore grief rituals, how to let love break you open without making you fragile. At the throat, we train voice resonance and the art of truthful silence, where speech becomes spellcraft. At the third eye, we dive into meditative inquiry, discerning inner knowing from egoic projection, seeing clearly without clinging to visions. At the crown, the surrender becomes practice, breath by breath, letting go of the need to be the one who awakens. This is the map ahead. But remember, the serpent awakens only for the one who is willing to shed skin. If you are ready to begin this deeper journey, watch Part 2, The Ancient Keys to Unlock Each Chakra Trial, or download your Kundalini Integration Guide in the link below. And as always, don't rush the path. The trials are not punishments, they are teachers in disguise. Listen closely, and the gates will open when you are truly ready. Then let us begin the descent inward, Part 2, The Ancient Keys to Unlock Each Chakra Trial. But before we name the keys, let this be remembered. No key is external. No method is magical unless met with presence. The gate opens only when the lesson is no longer resisted. Muladhara, the root gate, the trial of fear. The key here is embodiment. The body holds memory older than thought. If fear lingers, it is not because you are weak. It is because your nervous system was shaped in a world that taught you to brace. So the first practice is not meditation. It is grounding that brings you back into the body. Daily rituals, like barefoot walking on earth, deep rhythmic breathing, practices of stillness where you whisper to your cells, "It is safe now." Try this. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale through the mouth for 6. As you breathe, feel the ground beneath you. Press your feet into the earth. Repeat the words, "I am here. I am held. I am enough." This calms the primal brain, the part that doubts safety, that flinches at the unknown. With time, this key restores trust. And with trust, the first gate opens. 𝓂𝓑𝓼𝓼𝑛𝐻, the desire gate, the trial of longing. The key here is sacred containment. Desire is not the enemy, confusion is. When desire becomes entangled with identity, we forget who's steering the ship. To pass this trial, begin the practice of conscious craving. Start small. Before indulging any impulse, a food, a scroll, a sexual urge, pause. Ask, what am I truly seeking right now? Write it down. Observe patterns. Most desires are shadows of a deeper need. Touch craves connection. Scrolling craves distraction from grief. Lust may crave power or affirmation. Then breathe into the belly. Place one hand there. Feel the wave of emotion rise, and choose to hold it rather than react. With enough practice, desire becomes fire for art, not addiction. You become a creator, not a consumer. This is the key that turns longing into devotion. Manipura, the power gate, the trial of fire. The key here is aligned will. Power is not evil, it is raw. Like fire, it illuminates or consumes, depending on the clarity of the vessel that holds it. To unlock Manipura, begin with the ritual of intention. Every morning, light a candle. Not for ambiance, but as a mirror. Ask yourself, what flame am I feeding today? My ego or my essence? Write one sentence of aligned action. I choose to speak truth even if my voice shakes. I choose to lead without needing applause. I choose presence over performance. Then move your body with purpose. Sun salutations, martial forms, even mindful walking. Power lives in the solar plexus. It awakens through motion that honors direction. But here's the deeper work. Practice saying no without guilt. Saying yes without needing justification. Observe how often your will bends to please, to prove, to be seen. When will is aligned with soul, it becomes sovereignty. Manipura is no longer a battlefield. It becomes your throne. And the throne must serve the heart. Anahata, the grief gate, the trial of love. The key here is radical openness. Most hearts are armored temples, decorated with stories, guarded by old wounds. But love cannot enter a heart that is still fortified. The practice is simple, but not easy. Begin with forgiveness. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Each morning or night, speak aloud. I forgive you. I release you. I return to myself. Even if your voice trembles, especially then. Then turn inward. Place your hand on your chest. Whisper, I love the one who hurt. I love the one who closed. I love the one who is learning to open again. Tears may come. Let them. Anahata is not only about joy, It is the altar of sorrow transformed. To open the heart is not to be soft. It is to be unbreakable, because you are no longer hiding. And only with an open heart can truth be spoken. Vishuddha, the truth gate, the trial of voice. The key here is resonant integrity. This is not the chakra of talking. It is the center of truth, lived and spoken as one. Most people speak to be heard, but those who pass this gate speak to be clear. Begin this practice with a vow. Today, I will not distort my truth, even to make others comfortable. Now listen, what are the words you choke back? Where do you nod when your heart says no? Where do you flatter, hide, or twist to fit in? Write them down. Call them what they are, masks. Then practice speaking one truth per day aloud, even if only to yourself. But here's the deeper alchemy. Learn the art of silence. Pause before you answer. Wait before you react. Let your words emerge like sacred smoke, not noise but signal. And for those using their voice in public or prayer tone and frequency matter, chanting Ham, the bija mantra of Vishuddha, daily, even softly begins to awaken the throat's harmonic resonance. When truth and expression align, your voice becomes medicine. And when you speak from your center, illusions cannot hold. Ajna, the illusion gate, the trial of seeing. The key here is discerning stillness. Ajna offers many gifts: insight, vision, intuition. But all of them are mirrors, not conclusions. The mind is a powerful dreamer. The trial of this gate is to learn what is real, when even your deepest visions can deceive you. Begin by cultivating a practice of inner inquiry. Sit in stillness, eyes closed. Gaze gently at the space behind your forehead. When an image, voice, or insight appears, ask, is this from my higher knowing or my subtle fear? You'll feel the answer in your body. Truth feels quiet, unforced. Illusion often feels urgent, seductive, dramatic. You can also journal your visions daily, then review them a week later. Were they accurate? Did they serve or distract? This builds discernment, the core sword of the third eye. Another practice, fasting not just from food, but from information. A day without screens, books, even conversation. Let silence become your mirror. The clearer you become, the clearer the world reflects. Ajna then becomes not just sight but perception, without distortion. And only with this clarity can you dissolve at the final gate. Sahasrara, the crown gate, the trial of surrender. The key here is egoless devotion. This is not a gate you can open. It opens when you disappear. No mantra, method, or effort can force this door, because this is the trial of undoing. Here you are not asked to attain, but to release. To let go of the seeker, the teacher, the student, the I that has walked this whole path. The practice, then, is one of holy death. Each morning, before the world begins, sit. Breathe in, I am. Breathe out, not this. Let your thoughts rise, do not follow. Let your identity whisper, do not answer. If you hear a voice that says, you are awakening, smile gently and let that go too. Because Sahasrara is not a high, it is a void. Not a peak, but a vanishing point. In advanced traditions, the practice of 𝓂𝓀𝓼𝑑⁄ surrender to the Absolute is given as the crown jewel of yoga. Not because it is passive, but because only full release can hold full presence. You may feel sensations above your head, a pulse, a bloom, a dissolving. Don't chase them. Bow instead. Every moment becomes a prayer. Not my will, but thy will. And that thy is not outside you. It is the vastness that was always here waiting for you to stop clinging to form. This is the gate where the serpent uncoils into light, not to rise but to disappear into all. You are not enlightened. You are empty enough for light to pass through. And this is the final key. What if the greatest danger to your spiritual path isn't darkness, but light, pretending to be light? In the pursuit of awakening, we are taught to look for signs, bliss, expansion, the feeling of being chosen, special, or divinely guided. But rarely are we warned that these very sensations, exalted, elevated, bathed in a glow of spiritual purity, may be the most deceptive of all. Every ego fears being dissolved, but the clever ones adapt. They don't block your awakening, they hijack it. They wear robes of white, speak in soft tones, and quote scripture. And when they succeed, the seeker does not fall, they ascend into illusion. This is the false light. As Hermes whispers in the Codex of the Mind, where the fire burns brightest, the shadows dance closest. So let us begin, not by reaching upward, but by turning inward. Let us question the voice that says, I have awakened. Let us question who is doing the awakening. In the beginning, the seeker walks with humility. They meditate, they read, they experience subtle shifts, warmth in the spine, stillness in the breath, synchronicities that seem like messages from the universe. And somewhere along the path, a new sensation arises, uniqueness, specialness. I'm different now. I've seen what others haven't. It feels holy, it feels deserved, and yet this is where the subtle fracture begins. The ego no longer resists the spiritual journey. Instead, it steps into the role of guide. It wears the garments of the soul. It becomes the one who knows, the one who has awakened, the one who is now above the rest. This is not a rejection of light, but an impersonation of it, a shadow clothed in gold. This is the false light. It does not seek your destruction, it seeks your allegiance. It says, you are chosen. You are higher in vibration. You are further along. And once you believe it, truly believe it, you stop searching. not because you found truth, but because the ego has convinced you that you are it. But how can you tell when the light is false? You begin to notice the signs small at first, a subtle condescension toward others who are still asleep, a quiet satisfaction when someone calls you spiritually advanced, a craving not for silence, but for transcendental experiences, visions, energy, rushes out of body highs, not peace, but performance. The ego, having worn worldly crowns, now seeks celestial ones. This is spiritual elitism, a polished form of separation. Not I am better than you in the worldly sense, but I vibrate higher than you in the spiritual. It sounds gentler, but it divides all the same. The second sign is more dangerous still: addiction to transcendence. Moments of deep meditation, blissful union, or overwhelming energy become the new drug, not because they are bad, but because the seeker now needs them. The silence of ordinary life feels empty. The beauty of presence is overlooked for the fireworks of altered states. As the Kybalion warns, he who swings far to the right must swing equally to the left. Unbalanced ecstasy must eventually collapse. The pendulum swings, and what once felt divine may spiral into confusion, dissociation, even breakdown. Because without grounding, even heaven becomes a hallucination. The third mask of the false light is perhaps the most insidious: the illusion of inner guidance. You begin to trust your intuition more deeply. This is good. But something subtle shifts. The voice inside grows louder, more certain, more absolute. It tells you what you are, what others are not. It confirms your greatness, your destiny, your divine role. But ask yourself, is that voice stillness, or is it just dressed in silence? The ego can be cunning. It will speak in whispers, not to hide, but to resemble the sacred. It will mimic intuition, wearing its tone, its softness, its subtle gravity. But its fruits betray it. True guidance brings humility, simplicity, and presence. False guidance brings grandiosity, urgency, and self-importance. As the Hermetic axiom reminds us, the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Understanding does not arise from belief. It arises from seeing. Not everything that feels deep is true. Not every insight is divine. Sometimes what we interpret as revelation is merely the echo of our own unmet longing. The ego thrives where discernment is absent. It doesn't need to lie, it simply lets you dream. At the core of all false light lies one root: the ego's refusal to die. It does not resist your path to the divine, it co-opts it. It learns your language. It studies your rituals. It kneels beside you during prayer. But it does not bow. Because the ego's greatest fear is not failure, it is disappearance. Rather than risk being dissolved, it chooses instead to be deified. It steps into the role of the enlightened one. It says, I am no longer ego. I am awakened. I am the vessel of the divine. But remember this: even a mirror can reflect light, while hiding the one who stands behind it. Imagine a seeker who experiences a powerful Kundalini rising. They feel the serpent coil upward, visions flash, truths are revealed, and in that fire something ancient is awakened. But without grounding, without humility, without inner integration, the experience becomes a story. I am the embodiment of Shiva, he declares, not as a metaphor, but as identity. Soon after his life unravels, the energy was real, the awakening was real, but it passed through a vessel not yet purified. The ego seized it, and what could have been liberation became illusion, not because the light lied, but because the ego translated it into a crown. So, how do we escape the grip of the false light? Not by fighting it, not by casting it out, but by seeing it clearly, gently, persistently. False light exists only in the blind spot. It thrives where we refuse to look. Like a shadow at the edge of vision, it vanishes when we turn to face it. The first key is observation. Not passive awareness, but radical honesty. Where does your ego still find food? Is it in spiritual achievement, in the praise of others, in your secret belief that you are further ahead? Do not judge these things, simply see them. And in the seeing, they begin to dissolve. The second key is non-possession. Don't hold your insights. Don't claim your awakenings. Let them flow through you like wind through a flute. The music is not yours. It is passing through. Say not I have seen. Say only something was shown. And then release it. The third key is polarity. Every vision has its shadow. Every elevation has its fall. To walk the Hermetic path is to embrace both poles, not to cling to light nor fear the dark, but to walk the rhythm in awareness. As Hermes taught, he who knows how to separate the subtle from the gross has the key to transmutation. Can you separate truth from desire? Can you hear your intuition through the echo of ego? Then you hold the philosopher's stone not as a prize, but as a responsibility. Awakening is not a single event. It is a series of unveilings. Each layer peels back another illusion. Each realization demands the death of another self-image. And this is why the journey is not always blissful, because to awaken fully is to be naked before the real. The false light promises comfort. It tells you that you've arrived. It strokes the ego with symbols, titles, and certainty. But true light, silent, formless, uncompromising, asks everything of you. It does not speak in flattery. It speaks in silence. It does not elevate you above others. It returns you to the ground. And when that happens, you stop needing to be seen. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to be anything. because now you are not the character. You are the space in which the character moves. So remember, the brighter the light, the sharper the shadow. Do not fear the shadow, but look closely at what casts it. And when you see the ego dressing in robes of light, smile not in shame, but in recognition. Then turn inward again. Walk softly. And keep walking. Awakening is not about seeing more, but seeing truthfully. And sometimes truth hides beneath the brightest masks. But if you've come this far, if you've seen through the soft disguises of ego, and let the false light burn away its illusions, then you are ready for what lies ahead. Because awakening is not the final destination. It is only the clearing of the fog before something far more sacred begins to emerge. When the serpent no longer coils in chaos, when energy does not erupt but aligns, then begins the great alchemy. This is where the journey turns inward, deeper still, into the divine union. A union not of man and woman, but of spirit and matter, of heaven and earth, of Shiva and Shakti within you. In Part 5, The Divine Union, What Awaits After Kundalini Fully Rises, we will enter the temple beyond awakening, where silence becomes song, and the seeker becomes the flame. What if the true aim of Kundalini was never simply to rise, but to return to something ancient, something forgotten, something whole? From the outside, the awakening of Kundalini is often portrayed as a sudden burst, a surge of energy shooting up the spine, leaving light in its trail, a phenomenon, a metaphysical event. But in the deeper traditions, hermetic, tantric, alchemical, that is only the beginning. The real story lies beyond the light. In those hidden scrolls and whispered teachings, Kundalini is not merely a fire to be awakened. She is the sacred bridge between what is above and what is below, between spirit and flesh, heaven and earth, awareness and energy. And her rise is only the arc, not the destination. For the path of ascension is not upward alone. It is inward and ultimately dissolving. And when Kundalini reaches the crown, the Sahasrara, something unspeakable, happens the union of Shiva and Shakti, the inner marriage. The sacred rejoining of polar forces, once split since the first breath of incarnation. This is not about energy moving up. This is about separation, ending. Feminine and masculine, matter and spirit, time and eternity. When these dualities dissolve, what remains? And so we ask, when the serpent reaches the crown, does she rest in ecstasy? Or does she disappear into the one? The symbol of this union is not new. It has been hiding in plain sight for millennia, etched into staffs of gods and coats of arms inscribed in stone and myth. The caduceus. Two serpents spiraling up a central rod, meeting at the crown where wings unfold. Many know it today as the symbol of medicine, but its roots run deeper than physical healing. It is a map of the energetic body and a key to cosmic union. The central staff is the 𝓂𝓆𝑚𝑛𝑐, the subtle channel running along the spine, the two serpents, 𝓂𝓐𝑑𝑎 and 𝓐𝑵𝓏𝑎, the feminine and masculine currents, lunar and solar, weaving their way upward in perfect rhythm. And at the apex, the union, the opening, the winged transcendence. This is where Kundalini and consciousness Shakti and Shiva embrace. Shiva, the unmoving witness, Shakti, the dancer of form. They were never apart, only appearing so that the game of life could unfold. In Hermetic terms, this is the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. But this isn't about man and woman. It's about the inner architecture of all things. Everything is born from polarity and seeks return to balance. When this union occurs inside a human being, it is not seen by the eyes but felt by the soul. A silence erupts within, not emptiness, but fullness beyond thought. And then the world does not end. It becomes transparent. After the divine union, many speak not of visions or fireworks, but of a quiet revolution. An inner stillness so vast it seems to absorb the mind itself. In this state, the old boundaries dissolve. There is no longer a seer and seen only seeing. You look at the world, and the world looks back through the same eye. Some describe this as non-duality, others as liberation, but labels fall short. For how do you name the moment when there is no more inside or outside? Time bends, not as a theory but as lived experience. Past, present, future, they are not places you travel, but currents flowing within a single field of now. And love becomes something different. Not affection, not attachment, but a silent radiance that holds everything without grasping. One advanced yogi wrote it this way: "The body is still here, but I am not in it. I am the sky watching the clouds pass through me." There is no drama in this, no spectacle, only the gentle evaporation of identity. And in that evaporation, a paradox. You do not disappear. You become more present than ever. Not as a person, but as presence itself. But even here, at what seems to be the summit, the ancient teachings whisper a final warning. For the ego is not easily vanquished. It does not always return as fear or desire or doubt. Sometimes it returns wearing robes of light. It says, "You have made it. You are enlightened now. You are the chosen, the awakened, the God among men." And in that moment, the final illusion is born. The Hermetic principle of gender teaches us that when the inner masculine and feminine unite, a new creation begins. Divine creativity, unbound by ego, flows through the being. But if the ego claims ownership of that light, it becomes distorted. Divinity becomes domination. Wisdom becomes performance. This is the trap of spiritual pride, the subtlest of all shadows. Some traditions call it the crown catcher, the phantom that grasps at the throne before surrendering the self. But the true key lies not in claiming the light, but in becoming transparent to it. Let it pass through. Let it dissolve all notions of I have become. Because in truth, no one becomes divine. Divinity is what remains when the illusion of becoming ends. So if the serpent has risen, the only thing left to do is bow. And from that bow, something miraculous unfolds. The journey does not end at the crown. It begins anew in reverse. This is known by some as the descent of grace. A current no longer surging upward, seeking union, but flowing downward, bringing that union into the world. The energy that once climbed toward the heavens now pours back into the root, into the hands, the feet, the voice, the gaze. The sacred descends into the ordinary, not to escape the world, but to inhabit it fully. You don't vanish. You begin to live not as a seeker, but as the sought. A human who has realized the divine union does not retreat into caves or clouds. They walk the earth gently, silently radiating a presence that reminds others of home. They speak less because there is less need to explain. They smile more because everything becomes a gift. They are not trying to do good. Goodness simply becomes the nature of their being. In the Hermetic way, this is the flowering of the inner star. The moment when the all no longer sits above the mind, but burns within it. One teacher put it this way: true awakening is not escape from the world. It is to return and live as one who never left. And that is the quiet paradox. The serpent rose to meet the sky, but the star fell to light the earth. So now, close your eyes, not in retreat, but in remembrance. Ask yourself softly, honestly, what within me is still divided? Where do I still see other when all is one? And if everything were to unite in this very moment, if the boundaries within me dissolved, would I still recognize myself? Or would I realize that I was never a name, never a story, never even a seeker, but the flame behind the seeking, the silence behind the song, the thread of gold running through all things? This is not philosophy. This is not belief. This is a doorway. And it does not ask you to believe, only to remember. Leave a comment below. What does divine union mean to you? Because the serpent has stirred. The crown is open. And the stars are listening. But before you return to your day, before the mind weaves itself back into lists, roles, and names, pause. Let the echo of this remembrance stay with you, not as a concept, but as a presence. You do not need to climb a mountain. You do not need to chant 1,000 mantras. The temple has always been you. Every breath is a bell, every heartbeat a drum, and somewhere within this body temple, the union is already unfolding, not tomorrow, not after another teaching. Now. So the next time you walk through a crowd, look gently into the eyes of another and ask not with words but with being. Are we two, or are we one playing as two? And if something in them stirs, even for a moment, you'll know the serpent is not yours alone. It is the longing of the universe to reunite with itself. And in that realization, you are not a seeker anymore. You are a flame lighting others by simply burning. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Yes. But once the mind returns to the all, only love remains. And the stars. They will recognize you. Because you never truly fell. You only dreamed you were separate. And now, you awaken.